we are proud to introduce Dr. AndreaSgoifo, neurophysiologist, interviewed by Barbara Gavazzoli, Communication and Education Director.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very glad and honored to have Professor Sgoifo here with me. He's been working hard with us in the past 2 years while developing skin regimen. We have introduced him as neurophysiologist, and actually I'm not sure we all get that word, and maybe you want to also explain us a little bit more why your equipe is so unique.
Okay. Well, first of all, nice to meet you all. It's a pleasure to be here. What a neurophysiologist is? Well, I could define a neurophysiologist as somebody who looks at the brain, studies the brain, the nervous system, from the more simple unit, the neuron, to the most complex neural network. And of course, there are many types of neurophysiologists. A neurophysiologist can deal with the way the brain controls motion, but also the way the brain controls the emotions, the way we deal with environmental challenges. And that is basically what I've been doing for quite a number of years now. Yeah, and what we did in my lab with my research team was to put together many different competencies, ranging from physiology, endocrinology, ethology, psychobiology, in order to be able to measure objectively, in a quantitative manner, our stress response with a number of parameters. Yeah.
When we met Dr. Sgoifo, I think one of the most striking things was that stress is a very familiar word. I think we all experience it, and somehow we think we all know about it. But talking to him, even medicine had a clear idea of what really stress was, in the sense that it had never been defined. So it's been amazing listening to him on the creative and scientific way they've had to really find the measurements, and even on the stress concept. Can you explain it a little bit more scientifically, as you just said, with the criteria that you observe?
Yeah, I think it's important to try to define it, because there are many people studying stress from many different points of view. All of us have their own, each of us has her own idea what stress is. So I would define stress as a state of our brain that is produced by external environmental challenges, which are usually called stressors. And this produces a reaction, which is called the stress response, which is aimed at reestablishing the internal balance that was somewhat challenged by the stimuli. And this means that we have to recruit many different systems in our body, not just the neural system, the endocrine system, the immune system, because we have to put together a physical and mental reaction that is adaptive, that is very important, in some instances, even for our survival. So the stress response is a positive thing, which is something that probably many people sometimes don't think about. It allows us to adapt. We have an incredible kit, so to say, of response made of many different chemicals, hormones, neurotransmitters, that is extremely, extremely powerful and adaptive. So I probably removed, I hope so, a sort of a commonplace or a cliché that stress is something harmful, necessarily harmful. Sometimes I compare our stress response to other responses of our body, which are also seen as negative ones. Fever or vomit. We tend to think to this kind of phenomena as a sign of disease, but any medical doctor can tell you that these are adaptive responses, because fever allows us to defend ourselves much better against pathogens, viruses, bacteria, and vomit vomiting means that we are getting rid of toxic substances which are potentially even lethal for us.
I think we're very thankful to be able to reinterpret the concept of stress in a positive way. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this? You know, what is it exactly, this empowerment that we get when we feel that, feeling of being stressed?
Yeah. Well, you should maybe try to imagine a situation which happens often, which has happened probably to many of us, to be walking alone at night in your town and suddenly hear noise close by. When in that simple situation, our physiology gets into high gear immediately and very, very nicely cut and shaped for an adaptive response. So our heart races immediately, our eyes get wide open to favor vision, and our blood is shunted from those areas where it is not necessary at that moment to other areas where it is more necessary. So we tend to shunt our blood in that situation to the brain, to the heart, to the limbs, and we take it from the skin and we take it from the stomach. That's why we blanch many times in this kind of situation. That's why we suppress digestion, because digestion is not a priority when you are under threat. So this is an incredibly nice way we have, which is of course unconscious, automatic response, which is very, very adaptive. Yeah.
I think, as we said, that we're happy to have this mechanism, and still there are moments where we really feel that stress is a little too much, that we're really under pressure. Why is it?
But that is probably because this kit, as I called it, of response, is made for the short term. It means that it has to be activated and deactivated quickly. So there are two phases of the stress response. You have a quick activation, your heart races, your cortisol, as Claudia said before, your adrenaline go quickly to the bloodstream, but at the same time we need to shut off this response in order to avoid damages to our body. So the hormones have to go back quickly to resting levels. The heart rate has to slow down. And this is just as an example. I mean, if you are, and she also mentioned it before in the video, if you are a zebra or a lion in the savannah, as a prey or as a predator, you need to have this kind of activation. Because if you have this good activation, you can more easily hunt and catch the prey as a lion, and as a zebra, you can have more chances to escape the lion. And that is basically all you need to know if you're a zebra or if you're a lion. But if you are a human being, then the thing becomes rather more complex, because we tend to stress ourselves because we expect to be stressed, because we are expecting adverse stimuli to get over us, many times just because of our negative attitude or pessimistic attitude or our way of looking at things. So in that case, then the stress response is called upon many times for a prolonged time, and that can become damaging for our organism, damaging to many different systems in our body.
And so in a way, when we anticipate too much, when we are not able to switch off, we sort of live dysfunctional stress. And what happens at that point in our mind, in our body, in our skin?
There are many things that can happen, actually, and there are many studies showing that there is not even one system in our body that is not affected by all this. So the typical consequences of a chronic stress situation of anxiety, depression from the psychological side, but also psychosomatic disorders involving the cardiovascular system, like stroke, arrhythmias, and infarct, and all that nice kind of stuff. Yeah. And also metabolic disorders, diabetes is facilitated by repeated recruitment of the stress response.
And I don't know about you, but we sort of hear constantly that we live in a time that it's particularly stressful, but thinking back, we weren't there, but definitely running away from a dinosaur or fighting in the war, surviving during, a bad time, was hard as well. So is it that we're under a bigger stress? Is it that we're talking about it more, or we're measuring it finally, and so we think that it's worse?
Well, these kind of measurements that we are using and that we developed and other people also use are a relatively recent achievement. So to have objective quantitative parameters, biological parameters to measure stress is something that is quite recent as an achievement. So in this means that we don't have, so to say, historical data to refer to. But for sure, the pace of our life, as it was nicely shown before, in a way is too fast for our biology to adapt. In a way, we still have a biological kit to adapt to stress, which is an old one, that does not keep up with the pace of our cultural and technological development.
So the pace has changed, and so we need to find new solution to also increase our resilience.
Yeah, resilience is another interesting term that probably needs to be clarified. Resilience can be seen as a mental state, a state of our mind, of our brain, and an attitude. And that can be trained, as was nicely shown before. Can be trained. We can train ourselves to look after ourselves, relax, breathe properly, have a massage, and make use of essential oils. And what is important now that we can measure resilience. So we can verify biologically, clinically, whether these approaches to a better lifestyle are really effective. For example, measuring cortisol or from saliva, or measuring heart rate variability also.
This is a very interesting concept that I think we might, it's not so common to hear about it. So can you comment a little bit more on this?
Yeah, heart rate variability is a parameter that has had an enormous success in the last 20 years because it informs us not just about how the heart is reacting to a given challenge, but it informs us about how the brain is coping with the challenge, how well our brain is capable of facing a given stimulus. We have to make it simple, we have an accelerator and a brake for our heart. Our accelerator is the sympathetic nervous system. Our brake is the parasympathetic system. And it is important that these two components, neural components, do act properly in different circumstances. Generally speaking, the parasympathetic system means that we are relaxing. When the parasympathetic system is working well, we get to relaxation. We are more protected from stress-related disorders. When the sympathetic component is prevailing, in that case, we are more exposed to the risk of stress-related disorders.
So let's go back for a moment to the concept of resilience, because this is actually, Dr. Sgoifo, like Dr. Claudia Geer, and they've helped us tremendously to understand better what is happening to us, to our skin. But they've also helped us to create new solutions and also to measure them. And that's been as important as, studying and as the researchers. So we have actually asked Professor Sgoifo, and he's amazing at keeping Parma, to measure a specific self-care ritual, which we have which is composed by the application of the skin regimen essence and the cream. And he's going to tell us a little bit more about it. Let me just anticipate that we have used people that have used it, people that have used products with no specific benefits, and he's going to comment on the results. But all of them have taken some time to take care of themselves, to apply them. And the skin regimen group has also used the self-care massage that we have promoted with the launch. And I think we're all curious to know what has happened and how you have created this panel and observed them.
Yeah. Oh, it was a very interesting study. And I have to be honest, and Barbara remembers that, at the beginning I was a little bit skeptical. I am an orthodox, so to say, neurophysiologist. And I said, well, let's see. But I was really surprised, I have to be honest, by the results of this study. We studied 40 women aged 25, 50, and they were asked to self-administer the skin regimen, beauty routine, based on massage, as you heard before, and essential oils, and also a placebo treatment, devoid of all these properties. And the study was made of 2 phases. In the first phase, we wanted to see whether there is an immediate effect of this routine, of this beauty routine, in terms of hormones, heart rate variability, and so on. And so these women were not aware of which of the 2 treatments were taken at any time, and they tried both in a randomized order in order to avoid that the effects of one was somehow conditioning the effect of the other one. And in this first step, we noticed that the skin regimen routine increased, surprisingly and very significantly, the parasympathetic component. If you remember, what I mentioned before is the neural component that allows relaxation and well-being, favors well-being, and protects from stress-related disorders. And in the second phase of the study implied that these women were taking these 2 treatments for a longer time, for 1 month.
28 days, yes.
For 28 days, twice per day, so 4 weeks of treatment. And then we tested them afterwards, and we noticed many positive effects. There was an anti-anxiety effect. There was an effect on mood profile, amelioration of mood profile. There was an effect on cortisol levels. Baseline resting cortisol levels were reduced after 1 month of skin regimen treatment. And also the response that we produced in the lab with a simple challenge of the cortisol hormone was also dampened. Basically, it was abolished by the skin regimen treatment. So really, in both the short and long term, this treatment proved to be very positive and very powerful as a stress relief approach. Yeah.
And well, I remember your call and saying, we got the results, and I said, so, wow, you said, I've been impressed. And
yeah.
Just a little bit from the behind the scene. Professor Sgoifo has psychologists that work with him, but he's also part of the stressors, and he was part of the. He was putting the panel under stress. Can you tell us how you?
The way we stress people in the lab, yeah.
Because you seem so kind and nice, but he transforms.
No, it's very amusing to stress people in the lab. No,
a little cruel, then. Okay, let's edit.
It's a procedure that we did not invent ourselves. It's in the literature. It's very well known among colleagues. It is simply, it's just 10-minute testing. The first 5 minutes, the person is asked to answer to a number of questions about her or his social attitude. And the second part of the test, and that is more interesting, I have to say, the person is asked to count, to make calculations without the help of anything, of course, and just subtract from a given number a fixed number and go on subtracting. But the nasty thing, I would say, for these people is that they have to do this in front of an audience which they don't know, never met before. So it's a sort of situation where they feel like they are evaluated by a board of people. And of course, you can be more nasty, if you wish, because you can press the person to respond quickly, or use non-verbal behavior with your team members and making this person believe that she is really doing bad. And it's amazing that people sitting comfortably, just because they are asked to count backwards, they can raise from 60 beats per minute at the beginning, at resting, to 140, 150, 160 beats per minute. And we even saw arrhythmias in this kind of situation. So it's a very simple test, but it can be really activating. Yeah.
And they responded well. So.
And they responded well. Yeah.
So we're very glad about it. I really want to thank you on behalf of all the team, but I guess all the audience, because of the work you've done. You have helped us tremendously, and I'm sure that it's been extremely interesting for the audience as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.